Welcome everyone to episode 10 of the relationship series. This week I'm with my fellow Clarity Practitioner, Marina Pearson. Marina is an established author. She's had a best-selling book called Goodbye Mr. X. It's been published in numerous countries around the world. She's featured in Marie Claire, Huffington Post and been on Sky TV. And last year she did a very successful TEDx talk. She's currently living in Bali as an effortless living specialist, and she runs programs for entrepreneurs and business owners and helps them move from a stressful life into living effortlessly. Marina literally means you're about to give birth. You're how many weeks have you got until the due date?
He's due next week, so I'm literally just about to give birth.
Wow. So we appreciate you being on the call, and hopefully we can record the whole interview without any interruptions, but we'll see how we go.
I really hope so.
So Marina, I mean, we did the Clarity program last year, and I have some understanding around your background in relationships, but I would love for you just to share a little bit about, you know, what your background has been, how you've got into this, and maybe just some, I guess, key insights that you found along the way.
Well, let's just say that my relationships in the past were never all that great. In fact, I'd always think that the other person was the issue. As I find, you know, in the past, that a lot of my clients have thought that their exes were the issue, or the current partner's the issue. And it took me quite a while to figure out that actually the other person wasn't really the issue. That in fact, any kind of arguments or any kind of fallings out or any kind of breaking up was never really about the other person. It was actually more about me and what was going on in my head in that particular moment. But it took a divorce, and it's taken going through many heartbreaking times to realise that actually the only person that was in every relationship was me. And it was a massive insight that I had from that, which was like, oh my goodness, I'm the only stable part of this whole equation. That's kind of interesting to me. And there was a massive light bulb moment when I realised probably about 5 years ago now, that I'd been the same, you know, that I was the same factor in every relationship that I'd ever been in. You know, the people had changed, but I was the one who was in them. So something occurred to me, and it was like, oh, okay, well then if that's the case, then there's something I've got to change. And when I was going through my divorce, I realised that actually I wanted to get my hands on any kind of material that I could on relationship stuff. And the reason for that was this: I felt that if I knew more about relationships, that I wouldn't have to go through this again, because it was so painful at the time, that at least if I could learn from this particular situation, learn what I'd done wrong, learn what was going on in the relationship, then at least, you know, it wasn't all failed. So I went on a bit of a journey, and that was back in 2008. I left New York City. I came back to Spain, where I'd lived before, and I decided to move to London. And I was kind of thrown into the personal development industry, guided, if you will, because at the time I was working in the music industry. And what was really amazing about that was this whole new world opened up to me that I didn't realise actually even existed. I'd gone down the natural route of going to see a psychotherapist, you know, telling my story over and over again, and it didn't seem to help. And it was when I went to this massive personal development seminar with like about 1,000 people in London that I thought, oh my goodness, this is nuts, this is amazing. And I had a really big shift that weekend. So it kind of got me onto the personal development path, and to cut a long story short, I went on a bit of a journey with that. And this is when I wrote the book, Goodbye Mr. X, because I knew that it needed to be written. But at the same time, I found myself in a very interesting situation last year. My business wasn't doing as well as I wanted it to. I was just about to get married to my husband, and I wasn't particularly happy. I was quite stressed out. And it was when I came across Jamie's book, Clarity, that things started to change. And my understanding around relationships really changed. Because I'd always come from the perspective of, yes, it was my responsibility. But I'd never seen it from I'd written a book about being triggered. I'd written a book about, the other person's behaviour, said something about my past. It said something about, me having to deal with past stuff with my parents. And I had a whole book written with tools and techniques in there that could really help. But what I suddenly started to see so differently was that actually I couldn't be triggered by someone else. In fact, that none of these feelings that I thought were coming from somebody else's behaviour was actually coming from somebody else's behaviour. It was actually coming from me, my thinking in that given moment. And it was the most revelatory moment for me to suddenly have that insight, because I suddenly realised that no matter what the other person was doing, it didn't matter. In other words, it was really about what was going on for me in that given moment. And rather than saying, if they're being horrible to you, then that's fine, it wasn't about that. It was about me seeing that, their behaviour doesn't make me feel a certain way. Their behaviour isn't triggering an old emotion for me. Their behaviour is just their behaviour. I just have stuff going on around that in my head in that particular moment. Some days I'll have some stuff around it, and some days I won't. And it was really big, because I'd spent so many years working with people to help them get over that particular emotion, or going back to their past and figuring out what kind of issue they had with their father or their mother, only to find that actually none of that was relevant anymore. And seeing it from that perspective and starting to understand how it does truly work, my relationships to my family, my clients, my husband have all significantly shifted for the better. I feel more connected to them. I feel more present to them. And because I've got less going on in my head, I have less going on in my head. Therefore, I can be much more grounded with them and settled with them. One of the other insights that I recently had was when we give the other person the space to listen to them, but really listen to them, we drop our stories of what's going on in our head in that given moment. And it really I realised that any time that I'm having a moment with my husband, that we need to just not have that moment. In fact, step away and have a conversation about it later when we're both calm. But one of the other things that I've realised too is that we're always connected. And the only thing that ever gets in the way of that is our thinking in any given moment. So that to me was like a major overhaul of what I thought. Because I hear a lot of people say, I feel so disconnected. I can't connect. And what I've realised is that we're always connected. The only time that we're not is when we think that we're not. So yeah, the level of connection that I have with my family now, and the level of connection that I have with my husband and those around me, is far more, is far deeper. But the other thing I wanted to say to that is that I'm not afraid to speak my mind anymore. Like in the past, there was a sense that I couldn't speak my truth without fear of how the other person was going to respond. And what I'm finding is that actually I'm much more able to do this in a way that is compassionate and kind and that wants to find a solution versus getting really angry and, you know, needing to say that in that given moment. So communication's really shifted too, but this hasn't been a case of like doing a process or going to actively communicate, you know, communication school. It's just actually happened naturally, which for me has been a huge thing, because, you know, here was a person that would go for techniques and tools, and actually now I've realised that I don't need any of that. That in fact, when you've got less going on in your head, when you're more present to what's going on around you, you naturally go into this place of being able to communicate with people in a way that I certainly didn't know I could. So that's been really key. And what's changed in that respect, I guess, is my relationships to my clients is much more transparent. Anytime that I kind of get into my head about certain things, I'm able to speak to them about that. Whereas before I would hide, I wouldn't tell anyone. So my relationships have really kind of deepened in that respect.
Thanks, Marina. I mean, there's a lot that you really mentioned there. And, you know, one thing that I guess came up for me was when you were talking about your own relationship was, are you pointing to that it doesn't really matter what your partner's like, but if you're saying it's just you, or do, you know, do people's partners have a you know, a role to play as well in that connection? Because some people may be listening and thinking, well, this is all well, but the person I'm with is not connecting with me. They're just, you know, sitting in front of the television, or they're always at work, or you know, a client's just not listening to me, or my kids just, yeah, it's all well and great, but my kids aren't listening to me. What would you say to that?
It's a great question. But what keeps it coming up for me is that we're like tuning forks. And, you know, my husband isn't necessarily into the 3 principles or, you know, into the transformational work that I'm into. But he has, you know, his moments. And I've often heard people say, oh, but, you know, if that person's not interested, then how do you... But what I've noticed is that I love him anyway. And the times that he doesn't listen... what I've noticed is he's just insecure in his head in that given moment. He's not able to. So I realise that I sometimes need to give him space and for us to come back to listen to one another again. Because what I found is that when I'm listening, when I'm really truly present to him, he kind of falls into a different space and he can actually listen to me. And what I found is that when I've changed or when I've tuned in and I've got quiet, the other person does inevitably. That's what I've found. You know, let me give you an example. There was an it's actually something that I wrote in my book, but there was a moment with an ex relationship that I had, and he was really angry about how the relationship ended, and we met up for a drink, and he really needed to vent. And in that moment I heard the voice, and the voice just said, listen, don't say anything, just listen to him. So he vented and he vented and he vented and he vented and he vented, and suddenly he stopped. And that was that. The energy had nowhere else to go. The expectation of me to defend myself, the expectation for me to stop him from doing that. He ran out of puff, as it were, and all I heard was this. I started to hear beyond the words, and what I started to hear was a very scared little boy who just wanted to be loved. That's what I heard behind his words when I really stopped to listen. And suddenly the anger and everything else just dissolved, and I just turned around to him and I just said, I totally understand what you must have been going through, and that must have been horrific. And it just shifted the conversation into somewhere where I'd never thought it would have gone. And so what I learned from that experience was that when we get really present to the other person and we sit and we listen, their anger and their sense of whatever it is that they're going through, it can really dissolve because it's got nowhere else to go. Anger reaps anger, frustration reaps frustration. So if somebody's frustrated and the other person was frustrated, it spirals. What I've noticed, it doesn't really work. But if we can, and it's not a technique, it's just something that I've noticed. If I'm in a really grounded space and my husband's upset, or the other way around, because I'm not always grounded, I'm not always listening to him either. It really it can be a very calming effect, and it can actually have incredible power. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ankush, but that's what occurred to me to answer.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And one thing that really occurred to me as you were speaking was, there were times when I'm sure we've all done it. Everyone who's listening in as well has perhaps got in a space where they've said something that afterwards they either regretted or they knew deep down that they didn't mean. And we all get into that headspace. And I think one of the issues can occur is if two people are both in that headspace, it just ends up in an argument and an explosion. But I just thought, if all it takes is one person in that environment to not react, to let someone be in that headspace where they're not seeing things clearly and like you say, run out of steam, and eventually they will. I mean, we all do. We all naturally, sometimes we say stuff and then we're like, I don't really mean that. And we naturally come back to a place where we can communicate, where we can connect.
Yeah, and what occurs to me is that two people are speaking their truth. And the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I had an insight about this recently, and it's like, when you're in a relationship with someone and you want to be right and they want to be right, and you're both kind of wanting to be right. But what I realized is actually you're both right to some degree, and there's actually a truth that can be met in the middle of that discussion that you're in. Because in fact, there can always be a third right, if that makes sense. There can be an opportunity to see things from a very different perspective from both of those people. So I now see sometimes, when I'm not locked in my headspace of getting angry or being reactive, that there's always that the truth can be met in the middle, because you're both speaking from your own experience, and that's just as valid. So what I've found can be really powerful is when we listen to the other person's truth, that they perceive to be true, and they listen to yours, a new truth can emerge, a third truth that can be met from the middle.
I'd like to take a little bit different tact, because I know, as you mentioned at the start of the call, you're about to give birth, and as we're friends on Facebook, I've seen some interesting posts over the last year, and how you've experienced that. I think it's your first child, and how that's also impacted your relationship. I would just really love to draw some of that out as well, and love to get your thoughts and how what insights you've had and what you've learnt through that process.
Oh my goodness, what a gift of a question. Well, Ankush, becoming pregnant has been hugely transformational for me on so many levels. The transformation, mainly, I was always quite a very driven person, needing to get somewhere, needing to achieve and be successful, and kind of all of that's just being put to one side. And if I look back at the beginning of this year to where I am now, I can't really recognize myself much, because I actually really enjoy having loads of space in my day now. And what Leo has taught me, huge, like I would say, first of all, slow down. But this has had massive repercussions on my relationship with my partner, in that we see each other now. We actually get to spend time together. One of the things that we were going through before we came to Bali was that we hardly saw each other at all. We would meet, in the bed, and that would be it. And then in the morning he'd be off, and we'd hardly speak to each other. So we were feeling like we needed to spend more time. And it's been hugely, hugely powerful to be here together. But also from the relationship perspective and me being pregnant, I've really slowed down, which means that I'm much more present to my husband. So I would say that was the first thing. The second thing is I've been really witnessed to the presence of incredible wisdom, incredible wisdom of the body, incredible wisdom of the pregnancy. I still, every day, I'm in awe of who we are as people. And the reason for that is that I've been doing my thing, and my body has been doing everything it needs to do in order for this baby to be born, and to be done so in a way that's healthy. Today I had the final checkup, and he's in position, and he's in exactly the position he needs to be in for him to come out, and he will come out. So my body knows how to make a baby, and certainly will know how to let the baby out. So that in and of itself for me has been an awe-inspiring thing to witness and to be witness of, and to experience that for myself. There is no doubt in my mind now that we are surrounded by an incredible intelligence, and that is guiding us from moment to moment. And the wisdom that is surrounds us, is in us, is just truly divine. So these insights, have been hugely beneficial in terms of making decisions, but especially from the perspective of using wisdom as an opportunity to be in a relationship with somebody else. And, you know, women talk about hormones, they talk about changes in that and this and that. And actually, I found this to be quite an effortless pregnancy, all in all, to be honest. Because I've given space to it, and I've let go of the needing to drive myself into a place of success. And one of the other things that I've noticed is I've got very clear on what I want. And right at the beginning of the pregnancy, I had another insight, which was, if I'm going to have a baby, I'm going to need to really manage my time around the baby, not the other way around. So I suddenly had this huge insight into, oh, my business needs to fit around the baby and my family now, not the other way around. And so that's really shifted my perception around making space for my family, and that obviously includes my husband as well. Because what I've realized is I was never really present in many of my relationships. I would always want to be somewhere else, do something else. And I've become so much more present to my husband. He may not think so. Not all the time anyway. So that, you know, and finally I would say that the little ones really taught me about taking a back seat and becoming a parent. I know now, especially with this last bit of the pregnancy, that he's in charge. Yes, I'm here to guide him. Yes, I'm here to facilitate him being safe in the world, and for his spirit to be for his spirit to be guided by me, but not necessarily for me to impose myself on him. And there's a really fine distinction, and for me it was just really powerful, because I've been going, right, I want my child to be born, I really come on Leo, let's do this. But he'll come in his own time, he'll come when he is ready. And it's brought me present to something that I'd not really seen before, which was this sense of divine timing. That there is timing in everything, and yet if we're busy and we're stressed out, we can't see it, we can't listen to it. There is a natural rhythm of nature that we are all part of. And I've really felt that over these last couple of weeks, where I've just been really quiet and I've really made some space, and I sleep a lot, rest a lot. And I've become really present to that there is this something bigger than us at work and at play. So if there's wisdom in when he wants to come along, and there's wisdom in how he was created, well, we all come from that same place. And what I've kind of been present to is that the wisdom that there is in my husband, the wisdom that there is inside of me, the wisdom that there is inside of my clients, all of that is present. And the experience of being pregnant and just about to have our baby has been such a huge part of those insights for me. Because how can we not be perfect? You know, and the only thing that will ever get in the way of us seeing that is you know, our insecurity and our superstitious thinking. So in terms of what it's done for the relationship, it's been, in my view, been amazing. I've never felt so close to my husband. He may feel differently from time to time. You know, being a dad is not an easy ride, because I've been carrying my son for now the last 9 months, and I'm connected to that. And I think as a dad it can sometimes be challenging, because he's not connected to that, and he's wanting to be here, to be part of this, and yet feels slightly awkward because he can't be completely attached to the baby. But we've had some good chats about that, and we've come to some nice realizations as well. So, that I think, if in a nutshell, what I've learned is to really slow down and listen, and that has paid huge dividends to my relationship with my husband and myself.
Well, that kind of brings us to a very nice conclusion, I think. I really, really enjoyed this, and unfortunately the time just flown by, and
I know.
But yeah, no, I love the way you talk about this, and the sense of really slowing down and listening that you put across, just even over Skype. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina. It's been an absolute pleasure. If people want to get in contact with you, or they want to know more about what you're up to, how might they do that?
They can go to my website, which is marinapearson.com, and there's a free ebook that they can download, which is to transform their stress into effortless living. Or if they're listening in and they're going through a heartbreaking time, they can always go to goodbyemrx.com, and they can download the first chapters of my book. So those are the two ways that they can access me. There's also my Facebook page, which is Marina Pearson, and my Twitter, which is at Marina Pearson as well. So those are the ways that they can contact me or get in touch.
Fantastic. And people can contact me again via my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Ankush Jain Ltd. Via my website is ankushjain.co.uk. You can find this on iTunes, on YouTube, and there'll be links on Twitter. So thank you very much. I will speak to you'll hear from me again, the audience, and Marina, I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankush. Bye.
Bye.